Welcome to Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse, a podcast exploring cult classics, subculture, and geek media. I'm Nick.
And I'm Dave.
And we will be your tour guides for this deep dive of Neil Jordan's 1994 Southern Gothic romantic horror Interview with the Vampire.
This is a long time.
The Vampire Chronicles.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's true. We can't leave that off. They wanted to make sure that everyone knew they were opening up a series or something like that.
Yeah, and then they just fumbled that ball entirely. It seems really weird.
Yeah, it was like more than a decade before they made another one.
Yeah, and they skipped the one that people wanted and then did a bad adaptation of the following one? Is that?
Yeah. They skipped the Vampire Lestat, which would have been probably the best one to adapt because it's like a biography.
Yeah, and we're getting off on track right off the bat, but I looked into that a little bit, and it seemed like there was a little bit of availability issue with Tom Cruise because that's when he was making Eyes Wide Shut with Stanley Kubrick.
Huh.
So when they wanted to do it, he wasn't available. And then by the time they got around to Queen of the Damned, he might have been available, but they didn't have it in the budget to get him.
He was worth too much money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this movie's a long time coming for us to review. We kind of bumped it in the schedule, you know. It's a classic 90s vampire movie, and with the passing of Anne Rice, we figured we had to do one of them, something by her, and this is kind of the best one.
Yeah, I've got to say, I know I've seen this movie before. I think probably you and I watched it.
Sure.
But I didn't really internalize it or retain it in any way, and I didn't have like a connection to this. And this movie and the book were a fucking treat. I really enjoyed this.
This is a movie I've watched, at least a dozen times, and I've read the book probably 3 or 4 times. Before my audiobook, takeover, this was paper. I literally wore out a paperback version of this and bought a second one at a certain point. But this movie was a big success. It had critical acclaim at the time. It was made for $60 million, but it grossed $223 million, and it was pretty electric.
Yeah, and that's what seems so crazy that they didn't just immediately turn around and come out with a sequel.
Yeah, I mean, they had big names in it. They had Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Antonio Banderas, Christian Slater.
Is Louis in the book The Vampire Lestat?
No, he's not really part of that whole deal.
Yeah, because Brad Pitt had a miserable time making this movie. That's become really clear to me. And I could see if they needed both of them back, you couldn't get Brad. But I see so many interviews with Tom Cruise, and he clearly loved making this movie. Like, it was his jam.
Yeah, for sure. And this the Vampire Lestat would have been a really cool adaptation because there's just so much ground to cover. There's just hundreds of years, and so it would have been really rad. But that may still happen someday. Who knows?
Well, let's jump into that because AMC is developing the Vampire Chronicles as a TV show right now.
Oh, weird. I wonder if where they're going to start or who they're going to.
I think they're just kind of going through it because they've. I should have this pulled up. They announced casting for Lestat and Louis, and they announced another cast member today, actually. So that's rolling. And I think we'll be getting a Vampire Chronicles very soon.
AMC makes pretty decent stuff. I mean, they did
Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, The Walking Dead, which was, unfortunately is still going, but used to be really good.
Yeah, it used to be awesome. Yeah, I think that they'll probably do a pretty decent job because this franchise is something that you can really follow, like, you can follow the threads. There's a lot of mythology to it. And a lot of it is, a lot of the stories are told like in character. They're told from one person to another, but they're not actually like perspective stories. So those are things that could be easily developed for screen just based on the telling,
Yeah, I mean, you really could, if you wanted to serialize this out over a long period of time, remove the framing device of the interview.
Oh man,
and actually just tell the stories.
Sure.
And But I love the framing of device of the interview. At least in the book, I like it.
Yeah, I think one of the it's pretty important to have the framing device, because Malloy actually he's not one and done. He comes back in the series. Like I don't know, I'm getting ahead of myself, but basically he just gets obsessed with becoming a vampire, and he's trying to find Lestat.
Yeah.
He tries to search him down.
Which the movie just
jumps right to the chase. Yeah. But the thing, in the books, he never finds Lestat.
Really?
He goes to the places where he knows Lestat should be, and he finds Lestat's old watch and whatnot, and he actually gets found. He gets found by Marius.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, not Marius. Marius is another character it's a really cool book. He gets found by Armand.
Oh,
and Armand makes him a companion who basically helps him navigate the modern world.
Okay, that's what he was after already, so that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And spoilers for books you won't read.
I might.
Then I won't spoil it. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I can tell just kind of looking at the bibliography that there's a break, right, where she takes like 10 years off and does Christian literature for a little bit, and then she comes back. And I just have a feeling, just even from the book titles, the stuff after the jump is not primo.
Yeah, I think that actually there really are two tiers of Anne Rice books, or maybe even three tiers.
Okay.
There's the cream of the crop, which is like Interview and the Vampire Lestat and a couple others here and there. And then there's kind of the middle tier stuff, which is like the Mayfair Witches and various kind of like Memnoch the Devil.
Yeah.
Some stuff that's decent, and it's not like hacky or anything. And then there's the later stuff that's just, like I read Vittorio and stuff, and it just wasn't to the same level.
Okay.
Like, it was cool, and it was kind of almost like mythology like, but it had none of the intensity and romance. I don't know if that's even the right word. It didn't have any of the like, it didn't make you feel real feelings.
Yeah. Okay.
Like some Interview with the Vampire does.
And she was feeling real feelings at the time when she's writing Interview with the Vampire. She's dealing with the loss of a child, and like she's going through some shit, and that raw emotion goes into the book.
Yeah. It just kind of bleeds right off the page.
I was really struck with the book how gothic it is. Like, and what I mean is, like, I feel like she could be a contemporary with like the Bronte sisters and Mary Shelley.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't feel like a put on. Like, it feels like her natural writing voice is a Victorian one. It's
I love this style of writing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read all of that, the Bronte stuff, and even like Jane Austen and that sort of thing. I took several British literature classes in college, and I really I like eat this style up. For something about it, it's just sometimes it's cheeky, but it's always classy, even when it's talking about like dark topics. I don't know.
Well, it's like, it's a style in the same way that Shakespeare is a style. And people, maybe they bump up against it where they're like, I can't understand what they're saying, or this isn't really how people talk. And it's like, but that doesn't negate the emotional validity of what's going on just because it's stylized. It's just a form. Yeah. And so I was totally into that. The book was a pleasant surprise, and so was the movie.
I was going to listen to it. I've never listened to the audio. I was going to do that before this episode, but I didn't think I had time because of my packed schedule that I've just been keeping. I didn't think it's like a 14-hour audiobook. I didn't think I had time to fit that in between then and now, obviously, because I can't listen at work and stuff like that.
I sort of purposely powered through it. I listened during times that I normally just listen to NPR. Yeah. So like my commute to and from work, I listen to it, and all day at work, I listen to it, so I could really crush through the book as fast as possible.
You get it done in a couple of days. Damn.
And it was fun, and I probably will go at least onto Lestat, and we'll see from there.
For sure. And even the novel of Queen of the Damned is really good.
Is it? Oh yeah, and that's Yeah, I'm curious about all that stuff, and I'll probably end up watching that movie. Although I have to say, this is a pretty it's a bloody movie, and this was not popular in my house. Lisa was not thrilled with this film.
There's a lot of blood in it and stuff, but it's a vampire movie. And I was reading some stuff about this when it came out. Oprah actually walked out of this movie.
Yeah,
because it was too gory.
Well, is it the gory? I think it's the goriness, and you also have to wonder. They almost exclusively prey on black women in the first act of the movie, with just a few exceptions, and it seems like there's some uncomfortable stuff in this story.
Yeah, because Louis is a Louisiana plantation owner.
Yeah, that's a weird choice for a hero now. Yeah. I mean, maybe it seemed different in 1976, but now you're like, oh, this is a movie about a plantation. Right off the bat, when you see him kind of ride up on his horse, you're like, oh, this guy, it's hard to root for him.
Yeah, it really is. So, I mean, what have you been up to?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't been up to a lot. I just...
Yeah, I mean, me neither. We don't have to fill airtime because we're gonna wax on and off about this book. So
why don't we roll for initiative?
Yeah, let's roll for initiative. Talk about some news. 6.
I got 11.
Nice.
Okay, so this news segment has been perplexing me or vexing me a little bit. I haven't really known what to do with it, and so I've decided I'm gonna look at my Google front page and I'm gonna give some opinions on some of my top news stories.
Oh man,
that's how I'm gonna do it. So first, right up here, Interview with the Vampire AMC series casts Christian Robinson in a reoccurring role. I don't know this guy. I don't know what characters. So I'm going to skip past that and go to the rating of the Batman has caused heated debate. Apparently, there's some fans who feel the Batman should be rated R.
Okay.
I say, get a grip, losers. Why do you need a rated R Batman? I don't. Batman's not a rated R movie. It's never been a rated R movie. None of the other Batman movies are rated R. The comic books aren't rated R. I don't get that.
As soon as you say comic book fans say blah, I say shut up.
Yeah, shut up, loser.
I don't care what you want.
Yeah, see the movie or don't, doesn't matter.
Yeah, because the thing is with comic book fans is you have normal, reasonable, regular people all the way down to the most pedantic neckbeards in the world. And those are the ones that won't shut up.
Right. And so here's another. Did you watch the Harry Potter reunion special?
I did. That's actually on my roll for initiative.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'll pass it over to you because I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that and we can bounce back and forth a little bit.
All right. Yeah. So Harry Potter 20th anniversary, Return to Hogwarts is what it was called. And it's kind of a cool, they still have a lot of those sets and whatnot. So they bring back the original cast of Harry Potter, the Harry Potter movies, and they have them. There are some interviews and whatnot, and there's a lot of stock footage from the making of and all that. But then they have a lot of really cool like one-on-ones where the actors are kind of talking to each other and catching up and going back and forth. And some of that stuff is really cool. There
was some legitimately moving things in there, like Daniel Radcliffe and Gary Oldman. Like, I actually kind of teared up. Like when the admiration between them and the real affection is so strong, I was like, and that relationship in the books and the movies is such a big deal. So I was like, I have feelings about Harry and Sirius.
I mean, they were so good, and I thought that it was pretty moving seeing these people as real people and their relationships with each other, and like Tom Felton and Emma Watson, they're just like they're so tight, and they have such a a love for one another. It's very platonic, and they're just really, really genuine and real people. I really enjoyed this. I mean, there were a few stock or interview clips from Jo from like years ago where she talks about Harry Potter and whatnot. And they were very selective. They did not include much of her in this whole special. It was, there was maybe 3 minutes of J.K. Rowling.
Yeah. And that's, that's the sort of the cynical read on this thing. This is a little bit of Warner Brothers damage control on the damage to the brand that J.K. Rowling has been doing. And so, I think not including her in the reunion including her as little as possible and just with stock footage was kind of a message. And I don't know. I mean, I dance back and forth across this fence about it because I think at this point, what those stories mean to people is so much bigger than her. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that she needs to be stricken from history or something, but I also don't want to hear from her anymore. So
yeah,
it's like,
I actually I don't like a half in, half out style.
It's tough.
I wish they had either just had her talk with some people that would talk to her. Like, I know that there are some people that don't want to talk to her on the cast. Have her talk to somebody, have a chat, just like they had various various actors talk to each other. Have her talk to somebody, like maybe some of the directors. That would have been interesting. And then just edit the shit out of it. If she says some like sketchy, turfy stuff, it never makes the air.
Yeah, but I think if she was there, then that would dominate the conversation. And they want us to be focusing on Rupert Grint and Emma Watson sitting by the fireside and like talking emotions with each other.
Yeah. Dang, Rupert, that dude is really like, he's kind of an oddball weirdo, and I like him.
I really loved, I think one of my favorite things from that was, I think it was Alfonso Cuarón, the director of the third movie, that he asked the three kids to write a paper in the voice of the character the character.
That's hilarious.
And Daniel Radcliffe wrote one page and was like, I'm pretty proud of this. This will work. Emma wrote 12 pages and was like, eating herself up inside, like, this isn't good enough, and Rupert didn't do it. And I was like, oh, it's beautiful. That's like, it's so perfect.
And then they asked, why didn't you do it? He says, well, I don't think Ron would have done it.
Yeah. Those kids just embody those characters, and that part made it worth watching, regardless of what you think about Joe Rowling.
It was the perfect casting. They cast kids that were just like the book characters in temperament and look. So it was perfect casting.
I've been sneaking in rewatching those movies, which is hard between the content we dive for the podcast and then
stuff you want to watch.
That's new, and I've been also trying to like get a Harry Potter movie in every so often and just make our way through the series.
Well, good on you. I'm not going to bother.
They're mad. I mean, those movies, especially, like, they're good. They're still really good.
Oh, I'm sure. Just like this movie stood up really well, the interview with the vampire. So do you have any more stuff for your initiative? Or?
No, I can let the news go. I think we went too long last episode. We're still trying to fine-tune getting a 15-minute news segment.
So I've got 3 musical things that are new for January 2022.
Ooh,
so
nice.
I want to talk of those. Ouija Dude.
Ooh, yes, I know. Are they Belgian or Dutch?
I think they're Belgian, but I saw them live in Portland before the vid closed everything down. But Carrie and I went and saw them, and it was so good. Like, these guys fucking destroyed live. Like, it was mesmerizing black metal.
It's such a grim name. In Dutch, it means crib death.
Yes,
it's so grim.
And their new album, so the first 3 releases were a trilogy. They had the same name, 1, 2, and 3. And then this one is a new thing. It's a new era, and its name is in English. There's always blood at the end of the road. And this is fucking killer. Okay. Like, if you like the old releases, you're gonna like this. This is that kind of black metal that it's not super fancy, but it's layered and it's moody as fuck, and it's pretty unrelenting. This isn't the kind of thing. This is not easy listening, but it's really good. So Ouija Dude is the new thing. And then the next two are not out yet. They'll be out on the 21st. So 6 days after this podcast drops.
Okay.
But I'm already calling one of them my album of the year.
Before you've heard it?
No, well, there's 2 pre-release songs. 3 pre-release songs, my bad. 40 Watt Sun, Perfect Light.
Okay.
It's in the vein of the last album, not the previous ones. So it's not as distorted. It's more cleans, and it's just heavy and dark and mournful, just absolutely crushing, like sad music. Just 40 Watt Sun is ultimate sadness. And it's kind of classic British doom, but evolved into almost like a post doom because it's not even heavy distorted anymore.
So do we need to explain what doom? I think we've talked about what doom metal is.
It's really slow and moody and heavy.
Like Black Sabbath turned up, essentially.
And slower.
Or turned it down.
Yeah. Turned up in volume, turned down in speed.
Yeah.
And 40 Watt Sun, it's Patrick Walker is the main guy. He was the main guy for Warning, a British doom band. And then he formed a new band. It's all basically just him, both of these bands. It's like 9 Inch Nails, it's Trent Reznor. So 40 Watt Sun is him, and it's just really heavy, slow guitar playing that's melodic, sort of, and it's melancholy. And he sings cleanly and melodically. He doesn't growl or scream at all.
Okay.
And it's all just pure like this melancholy darkness. It's really great music if you want to just be totally bummed out, and sometimes you do.
Yeah, those are both your music picks there are depressive.
Oh yeah,
bands.
for sure. One is more angry sad, and this one is just sad.
Very
and then
cool.
the last one is Boris. New album.
Such a good band.
Yeah, Japanese experimental heavy music. With their album is simply called W, the letter. And I'm stoked for it. I really like Boris. They're not a band that goes in heavy rotation, but when I saw this on the list, I was like, okay, that's definitely instantly going into my queue.
Somehow they're a really interesting band because like Henry Rollins plays them a lot on his radio show, and when he kind of cues up a Boris track, I really have no idea what it's going to sound like what the song is going to be. Like they're kind of all over the place in a really good way.
Yeah. Boris is interesting music that's fairly unpredictable, but it's always going to be quality. So I have no idea what to expect for this new album, but I know it's going to be good.
Yeah, totally.
So that's it. That's my initiative. So how about we get into some podcast fuel?
Our podcast fuel today is Blood Orange from Sasquatch Brewing Company in Portland, Oregon. 5.8 ABV. It's a hazy IPA with blood orange in it. They don't have much of a description on their Untapped entry for this. But it tastes, it's very blood orangey. Like it tastes... It's not as dry as this, but it's sort of like a killer mimosa at a high-end brunch, where you get to choose what kind of juice you want your champagne mixed with.
Yeah. And
you went for the fresh squeezed blood orange. It's very strong.
Yeah, this is really good. It's not so it's a hazy IPA, and I always expect if I'm going to have a hazy IPA, especially if they say like orange or any fruit, I expect it to be really really smooth and not bitey at all. But this has actually got a little bit of bite to it, which is good. It's a little
pretty
bitter.
It's pretty acidic, I think.
Yeah.
It's almost towards grapefruit.
Yeah,
flavor.
I was gonna say it's almost got like a note of sourness to it, just a tiny bit, and it's really good. I'm digging this beer. I'll definitely finish it. So let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back and dive into Interview with the Vampire.
All right, welcome back, divers. Let's dive into Interview with the Vampire, 1994, Neil Jordan.
This opens up on a really cool kind of cityscape, like panorama, and it's kind of flying in and around, and it made me think, oh man, drone footage. But
no, this is a helicopter.
Yeah, they had a helicopter flying through New Orleans.
Well, before that, the first thing I noticed was the Geffen logo, and I thought, Geffen produced movies? They're a record label.
Yeah, and Geffen is the one who put up the money for this.
This was a passion project for him. He really wanted to make this movie.
Yeah, evidently he had read the book, and he was really a big fan, and so he put up the big cash, because previously most vampire movies weren't high cinema. They were, kind of just horror flicks. He wanted this to be like a true masterpiece of vampire cinema.
And there was kind of a vampire moment right here in the mid 90s.
Well, it was the 90s, man.
Yeah,
it was the gothic. Everything was
cool.
cool.
Because Coppola's Dracula is right around this time too.
Yeah, we have some good vampire stuff from the 90s, some primo quality, and most of it stands up.
Oh, really? Well, that just bears diving into, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, but yes, I cut you off.
And so through the cityscape, they've got this kind of classical music with opera singers playing, and it immediately sets the tone. And this is a modern city. This is modern New Orleans.
Or San Francisco.
Oh, is it San Francisco? Yeah, you're right. So it's modern, and you have just an immediate gothic vibe. It's nightlife. It's this classical music. It's classy. Everybody's just there's just crowds on the street, and it's really interesting. Not a cell phone in sight.
Just people living in the moment.
Just people living in the moment.
I really, and it's we go from that helicopter flyover, which made me think of Lost Boys, because it opens up in a similar way over Santa what's it called? Santa Clara.
Yeah.
Or Santa Carla. Yeah. But
it's really Santa Cruz, right?
Right. Yeah. And then it goes down, and it kind of switches over to a crane shot, and then the tracking shot through the streets of the city. And I kind of it seems like real people, right? Like not like
doesn't
actors.
seem like extras at all.
And they're looking at the camera, or not. They're not noticing the camera. Some of them.
Yeah.
And it just occurs to me that I think this is Lestat perspective.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I do. And I don't think, because it's not a camera, right? We're not seeing through the eyes of an actual camera. So when the people look at the person, I think it's probably Lestat.
I was thinking it was actually once you get down to street level and you're heading toward the hotel, I thought it was actually maybe David Malloy going toward the meeting.
He's already in the hotel.
I know, but time means nothing in these movies. I think, we're maybe tracing him. I mean, it could be Lestat stalking them, but we know that maybe we know Lestat is in the city at the end of the movie.
Yeah, so spoiler, because he shows up at the end of the movie.
If you didn't see a 1994 movie by 2022,
it's just this is the first of many spoilers.
Yeah, get fucked. So, we know Lestat's in the city, and we know he's keen to David Malloy.
Yeah. So
Daniel Malloy, my bad.
I had not thought of that until just now, but I was like, whose perspective is this that we're traveling through? So
it's Oprah.
It's Oprah. And she's like, she looks in and says, "Nope, not for me."
She leaves.
All right. So
they were set in modern day San Francisco. Reporter Daniel Malloy is meeting up with a fellow Louis de Poindulac, who claims to be a vampire.
Yeah.
And we have some serious anachronisms. We have smoking inside. We have an Iowa tape deck.
With the full-size tapes.
Yes. And it wasn't even the mini.
Yeah.
And we have Brad Pitt and Christian Slater in this scene. And I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I have always thought Christian Slater, whenever he's on a screen, it's impossible to ignore that guy.
Yeah.
He just has a look, and I don't know. He's just an amazing actor.
I've got it in my notes here. I miss Christian Slater.
Yeah.
Where you at, dog? It's been a minute, and I've always liked you since I was a kid.
Everything. Young Guns too. I mean, oh man, Young Guns and Young Guns 2. Some of my faves.
I think of Robin Hood.
Robin Hood? Yeah, for sure. He's Will Scarlet. Yeah, I love Christian Slater in this role. He's so good. And of course, I think that we should talk about the casting of Brad Pitt because immediately Anne Rice loved this casting.
Oh, really?
She thought that he looked right and he was capable of portraying the sadness and the yearning that Louis needs, because Louis is kept alive, I guess, vibrant by his strong emotions. He's very emo.
Yes, very much so. It makes him kind of like an unsympathetic protagonist, I think, because he's such a sad sack.
Yeah.
It's hard to deal with him sometimes.
Well, he's complicated because sometimes you love him and then other times you're sick of him, and that's why you love it when Lestat makes fun of him.
Right.
So yeah, they're in this office, and basically Daniel Malloy is like, you don't really believe you're a vampire, do you? And so Louis has to like put on the special effects. He has super speed across the room to turn the light on, and when he turns the light on, you see that his skin, you can see veins, and also he has these striking kind of yellowish eyes.
Yeah. So first shout out to Stan Winston. I'm on record. Rick Baker's my guy. Stan Winston is a close second.
So did Stan Winston do the animatronic from the throat slitting scene?
Yeah, the puppet.
Yeah, that
is such a good puppet.
It looks so real. Yeah, so we'll get to that later. But the practical effects in this movie are off the hook. Like the practical effects and the makeup. I guess one of the things that Brad Pitt hated about making this movie is, first of all, it was 6 months of filming at night. So he was never saw the sun, basically. And he hated the long periods in the makeup chair.
Oh, for sure. I could see that.
And so that was one of his biggest complaints. So basically, Louis, our protagonist, he convinces the reporter that he really is a vampire. He spooks the shit out of him. And then he says, oh, where should we begin? Where I was born, etc. Or maybe when I was born to darkness.
Right.
And so he decides he's going to start the tale with when he was made a vampire.
So I completely did not remember that the premise of the movie is a literal interview with a vampire.
Literal interview.
And so when they start out like this, I was like, oh shit. It's really an interview with a vampire.
I bet when she was writing this in the 70s, this was like a killer premise for
it's
a
good
novel.
Hook.
And because just like when I first saw that, or when I first heard of this, I read the book before the movie came out. And it was fucking amazing. When I saw it, because I'm sure I've told all the divers I was kind of a emo lad myself. I guess emo is wrong because that's an actual scene.
Yeah,
I was sort of goth metal, I guess.
Yeah.
I was very typo negative.
Yeah.
And so my black fingernails and my my long black hair.
Actually though, this all predates you even owning any black clothes.
That's true. This predate when this movie came out. But I had read the book before this movie came out, which is interesting. This is middle school football player Dave was reading this. Yeah, I played football all the way up through 9th grade. It's crazy. So yeah, I read this and I was immediately into all this kind of goth scene and style, but this movie took it to the next level, I think, which I think is very interesting. So anyway, I was astounded by the premise as well. Okay. So he talks about his he's this rich plantation owner in the late 1700s, and it starts off with him weeping from his wife and child dying.
Yeah.
So he basically starts out with like infinite sadness.
Yeah, a melancholy plantation owner. Yeah. And this is a bit of a departure from the book, because in the book he didn't have a wife and child. He is the head of the plantation because he becomes the head of the family, but he's got a mother and sister that he's essentially looking after.
Yeah.
Something I thought the movie does really effectively is take the story and just streamline it. Like it's the hot rod version of the story.
Yeah, they
took the
really,
fenders off and like
they really crush it down and make it quintessential. Some of the dialogue I really like because they take it right from the book.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
We should say Anne Rice wrote the screenplay.
Yes,
so that's another David Geffen get. He basically is like, why don't you write the screenplay? And she's like, okay, don't mind if I do.
Which is amazing because only in something like a passion project would the author be allowed to do the treatment.
It very rarely happens. She'd never written a screenplay before. So that's, here, have a multi-million-dollar movie.
And they almost always just get some Hollywood guy that has written a dozen screenplays and done a dozen adaptions. And so it was really good that they let her do it, because I don't think someone else would have kept the almost formal dialogue that was in this book.
No, probably not. And so, as you said, we got our melancholy plantation owner, and since his wife died in childbirth, he's just living like he doesn't care if he dies. Essentially, he's whoring and gambling and just like hanging out in the sketchy parts of town. And this is when he catches Lestat's eye.
Yeah, it's this really cool scene where he's in a brothel or a tavern or something.
Yeah, the Taverne du Chat Noir.
Yeah, and he's gambling with this guy, and he has 4 aces. The guy accuses him of cheating, pulls a pistol on him, and he just pulls open his shirt, and he's just like, you lack the courage of your convictions. And Lestat is up on the balcony looking down upon him, and he's like, oh, I like that guy.
Yeah.
He's got some panache.
Yeah, and this might be just a good time to point out, this is a very gay movie.
Oh, yeah.
It is like...
I think that if you are into vampires and you're not okay with queer stuff on the screen or in the book, you're into the wrong genre.
Yeah, it is super queer, and their relationship... and then Louis' relationship with Armand, which doesn't go as deep in the movie as it does in the book.
Yeah.
It's all very romantic. It's not platonic. They're not pals.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. They made it less gay on the screen than it was in the book. And there was even discussions. Anne Rice pitched the idea of having women play Louis and Lestat. They actually wanted Cher to play Lestat. And they were going to have a younger woman play Louis, and they were going to make it more gay. But they thought that would sell to the public better than men.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting. I could see that working.
Yeah, it would have been cool. Yeah, I'm curious to see these characters could easily be gender bent, either of them in either way, both or one. Yeah. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I thought this scene was really cool, and this is our first look at Tom Cruise as Lestat, and I think a lot of people, and rightly so, have a bit of a disdain for Tom Cruise for being kind of a weirdo and kind of a like this kind of, I don't know, cult guy and just weird and strange.
Sure, that's fair.
But his physical acting is ridiculous. He conveys so much just with body language. It's insane.
I would say it is because Tom Cruise is such a weirdo that he is such a great actor. He's like one of these transformative actors where he embodies the character. and he's just on fire through this whole movie. He's so good.
Well, he's totally transformative. They supposedly before the filming of this movie, he went and he was watching footage of lions killing zebras in order to get the body language down of how to do it, how to go for the neck.
Yeah, and he is very feline, and he has like a Lionel mane as well.
And, he's got that blonde Lestat hair.
And then what Lestat, that fits his name too, right? What's his
Lestat de Lioncourt.
Yeah, so it all fits.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's good work. Good work, Tom Cruise. You're a good actor.
Yeah. And so basically Lestat at first is like, I'm making this guy a meal because he feels real feelings and I want that and I'll get that. There's the implication that the blood is in some way enhanced when there's emotion present in the person, or maybe just the experience, maybe not the blood, but
because basically Louis, he leaves the bar with the girl and they're out walking on the docks and making out, and he goes to get rolled by her pimp. And Lestat dispatches the pimp and the sex worker and takes Louis up in the air. And so this is where we see Lestat flying. This is I'm going to put this on evidence that it's him flying over San Francisco at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, that's true.
He flies up in the air with Louis and asks him if he's had enough of death or if he wants more. And Louis said he's had enough.
Yeah, and so then it kind of cuts to a graveyard where Lestat is, like basically he made Louis the offer and Louis was like, okay. And so then he drains him completely and then he bites his own wrist and the blood just starts splattering down onto Louis' face and he latches on to the wrist.
Yeah, and this was the place where in my notes I wrote the movie is so gay because the whole time Louis is sucking on Lestat's hand or his wrist, when you cut to Tom Cruise's face, he's making I'm getting a blowjob face through the whole thing, and I was like, oh wow, it's gone from subtext to text. Like it's very gay.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not going to disagree. And so, like, then he just starts like thrashing around on the ground, and Lestat, he's like, "Your body is dying. Pay no attention. It happens to us all." And I was like, "Oh man, he's so fucking cold."
He is, and it's that is much goes into much more depth in the book about expelling all your human fluids and everything, and it's like, oh, so it's like you get me into a vampire and then you have like one night of having Crohn's disease and shitting your guts out, and then once you're purged, then you can forget about filling yourself with blood.
Yeah, and it's really in the book they really go into how Louis' actual vision is different. He sees everything different. And in this book or in this movie, it's they don't tell you that. They really just show you. And he does say, like, see the world with your vampire eyes, and that's the end of it. Like, it's really cool how they impart that.
We see, because you see Louis kind of like out in the swamp just vibing on everything, and I put in my notes that being a vampire is a lot like being on mushrooms. Because he's got that, like, he's seeing things on a new level. His Ajna chakra is open and he's perceiving new things.
Yeah, I mean, I just said he's a newborn vampire. He's reveling in it, and that's what he says to the interviewer, Malloy. I just thought this was really cool, like the creation. And one thing that struck me at this point in the movie, and I was thinking, man, they just get right to it. Like they get straight to it. It's like, okay, he's a sad sack. Okay, now he meets a vampire. Now he is a vampire. Right. They waste zero time.
Yeah, I think when we see this story play out on AMC, this is a whole season worth of stuff. They'll drag this out.
Just you think he won't be a vampire till the end of season 1 or some shit?
I bet we get a good 3 to 4 episodes before we get here to him getting turned. You know, a lot of courtship with Lestat and Louis probably first.
Maybe.
Think how long they kept Shane alive on The Walking Dead.
I know. He's like dead within a few pages in the comic.
Right. So they'll drag this out.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought it was interesting how Lestat says like coffins are an unfortunate necessity.
Yeah.
But I thought it was just very handy that he had some fancy ass coffins at his estate, just there, ready to go. No big deal.
So that's another departure from the book. And the book is fresh in my mind, so I'll catch all these because the book, even gayer than the movie, they spend the first night in the same coffin because it takes a while to get Louis his own coffin. So they have to spoon up in Lestat's coffin that first night. In this one, like you said, magically there's 2 coffins in the basement. We could just say that has to do with Lestat's good planning.
Or maybe Louis thought he would die soon, and so he had a coffin.
He bought one. He had one on deck because he didn't want his family to have to go through that. He's like, I already picked the one I want.
Yeah, I want this cool black one with gold gilding and all that.
He is a flamboyant gentleman.
Yeah, he is for sure. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then basically Louis almost immediately regrets becoming a vampire.
Yeah, it's like, so the first scene of them kind of out on the town, they go to this cabaret and they're preying on another sex worker. If you're a mixed race sex worker, you're not making it out of this movie. That's one of your prime targets. And they're feeding on her, but Louis doesn't want to finish her off, but Lestat does.
Yeah, it's like he tricks him, so like Lestat bites her and then hands her neck over to Louis, and he's drinking her, and he's like, okay, I'm going to stop before she dies. But little does he know, Lestat has grabbed her wrist, and he finishes her off for Louis.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he's, flabbergasted.
And they just drop a couple bits on the table like this is normal. And they're like, oh man, so many girls get murdered here at this cabaret.
Yeah, I mean, that scene was pretty sad. One of the things that I noticed about this movie is, and the people getting fed upon, is they make sure that the actors and actresses and whatnot, they are very clearly instructed. Like at first it's ecstasy, so do that, but then after a while it's painful, and at a certain point it's just agonizing and you don't want it anymore.
Right.
And so in all of these feeding scenarios, you start feeling for the person, the victim. You're like, oh no, this is horrible for them. And then then they die. I really liked the scene at the high society party.
Yeah, that's the next one.
And they're like going around, and Lestat's like, read her mind. And Louis like, I can't. He goes, the dark gift is different for all of us.
Yeah, it's
Lestat has the best powers. He can fly. He can read minds super fast. We know he can walk on walls and ceilings.
Yeah. So what are all these in Vampire? What are all these powers
Oh,
called?
in Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, alacrity, is that?
Well, that's a celerity thing.
Celerity. That's the one.
I think these guys are both Toreador. That's pretty. Clear.
I was gonna ask you what clan they came from.
These guys are Toreador. Well, and the weird thing is if you get into the lore, Lestat seems like he was embraced by a Nosferatu.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the guy who didn't give him a choice. He's this like gnarly, ugly dude named Magnus.
Okay.
But yeah, obviously their lore is not Vampire the Masquerade lore. But yeah, some of the powers that they use like don't exist, like walking on walls. That's not really a thing in Vampire the Masquerade, even though it's traditional vampire lore.
Oh yeah, Dracula did that shit all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, these guys are totally Toreador. They're fast. They can beguile people. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so I love this scene because they suss out that there's this old lady, and Lestat says she had that young guy murder her husband,
right?
And she's got some poodles, and they're gonna go for a walk, and Lestat is like, evildoers are easier and they taste better.
Yeah. and Louis is supposed to take the old lady, and Lestat's gonna take the young fop.
Yeah.
That beautiful young fop. And Louis, Piss Pants Louis can't do it. He can't even kill this murderous old woman, and he feeds on the poodles instead. And dogs have never done anything bad to anybody.
And Lestat is just disgusted with him, and he comes and breaks the old lady's neck.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I can just see Lestat's he's just so like unsatisfied. Like, you're the worst vampire.
Well, yeah, I mean, because mainly the thing is, it's going to get them in trouble. Like, Lestat's pretty reckless, but he's not like eat a dog in front of an old lady and leave the old lady to talk about it reckless.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's crazy. And then they go back to the plantation, and there's like bonfires with the slaves, and they're doing their magic and ritual stuff, dancing and singing.
So basically, Louis is feeding exclusively on chickens and pigeons. Mm-hmm. And Lestat is feeding on the enslaved people of the plantation.
Yes.
And it's not going unnoticed by the population that people are dying like crazy, and that the master of the house he's got this new friend, and they don't eat food. And it's all the book. I'm always the book guy. The book is very clear that the enslaved African people are very knowledgeable about the supernatural. They have a lot more knowledge than the white population of the city does.
For sure.
So they know what's up. We've got a vampire problem.
And like then it kind of cuts to the house, mm-hmm. and they're in there, Louis and Lestat, and the lady who acts kind of as his house servant, who mm-hmm. brings him his food and whatnot, she kind of pleads with them, like, they're concerned about you, they're worried for you, you don't come out and see them anymore. She pretty much is pleading, mm-hmm. and then Louis, he bites her.
Yeah.
He can't, she's too close, and she's too delectable.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of those uncomfortable scenes, because it's Tandy Newton from Westworld.
Okay.
Just completely wasted in this part, because it's such a little part. And she very much implies like that they have a sexual relationship.
Sure.
Because she says this thing about, you don't come to the slave quarters anymore. And the whole thing, it's like, ooh, this is all very, very probably true to the time, but very not uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's not modern acceptable. But
no.
This is the late 1700s. I mean, and so he bites her, and he can't finish the deed, and she screams. Mm-hmm. It's like,
no, he finished. This is one of the few people he.
Oh, does he? Does he?
He kills,
her?
Yeah, because then this is right as the slave revolt is about to happen,
and they're walking up to the door with torches,
and he basically comes out the door, hands the body off to them, gives a speech to the assembled mob, and says, "You're right. Your master is the devil, and this house is cursed. You're all free. Give me the torch. I'll burn it myself." And he basically co-ops their riot and burns his own house down.
And Lestat is so sickened by the wastefulness. Like, oh, you had such a great setup, and you ruined it.
Lestat immediately moves into Louis' house, and immediately we're lucky to have all this. Like, he insinuates himself into Pont du Lac so quickly, and it's just been snatched away from him.
Yeah, and he's just pissed. Like, you can tell he's a dude who's lived a lot of nights on the streets, mm-hmm. and he doesn't want to give up this nice mansion.
Yeah, I love when he's chewing Louis, because Louis he carries Louis out of there. And then they go and like they're sleeping in a crypt. Yes. And he's like, "I hope you're happy, Louis. We're sleeping in a dirty crypt." And he's just like, he's so bitchy about it.
Sometimes when someone fucks something up and I can empathize with that.
He's like, you're my dog and we're going to stick this out, but I'm really pissed about sleeping in a crypt.
Yeah. So they move to New Orleans and they just, and they kind of reset their life there in the big city.
Yeah.
And they're like feeding on random ladies and craziness happens. And Lestat bleeds a lady into a wine glass. And it just struck me with just how damn gothic that was. Like,
yeah. And I think this is where Lisa finally was like, she's like, I'm done with this movie and left. She was like, no more of this.
Dang, it's such a good movie. Like,
yeah, well, not if you don't like seeing ladies bled out into wine glasses.
Well, it's a vampire movie. I mean,
not everyone likes vampire movies.
People gonna bleed.
Yeah. And while they're living it up in New Orleans, Louis is still being a puss about this. He's obviously drinking blood, right? Like Lestat always
he just won't kill.
He doesn't want to kill people, and he's really like shamey on Lestat all the time.
Yeah, constantly. And so at some point, there's a plague outbreak in New Orleans, and Louis is going walking, and he's not happy for one reason or another.
Now he's bumbling around out there, and he's shotgunning rats as he goes. It's like he grabs rats off the street and just pops them and squeezes them out,
And then he finds a little girl who's clutching the hand of a dead and rotting woman, her mother, and she's crying and then she kind of hugs Louis and latches onto him and asks him for help. He can't help himself and he bites her.
Oh, yeah. And Lestat is there so fast to laugh at him.
Yeah, he's like, you're a scumbag.
Yeah.
You're eating a girl.
Yeah, because he's like, you wouldn't feed on the 2 girls I brought home, but you come out here and you're going to kill a little girl. You're so gross.
I love Lestat.
And Louis runs off and he's like, you don't understand me, Dad. he runs off.
He really does.
And Lestat, he waltzes around with Claudia's dead mother.
He grabs the corpse and starts dancing.
Yeah. Lestat is deliciously evil through this whole thing.
Yes, he's the best.
And Louis takes off and does not finish off Claudia. Like we get his voiceover. He talks about her strong heart and her will to live, and how he just couldn't bring himself to do it.
He couldn't do it. I do want to say, as an aside, you know how I feel about child actors and how I hate it when kids are in movies.
If you say anything bad about Kristen Dunst, I'm flipping this table over.
I hate kids in movies, and I don't like it how children overact and all of that. But I want to say this is the exception. I think that Kirsten Dunst is absolutely brilliant in this movie. I think this might be the best child acting I've ever seen.
It's so good.
It's amazing. Like, she actually bombed her audition for this movie, and her acting coach was outside the door listening when she did it. And when she left, he grabbed her by the shoulder and said, nope, you're going to go back in there, you're going to apologize, and you're going to do it again. And she did, and she nailed the role.
Yeah.
And she fucking kills it in this movie.
She's so good. And I kept stopping the movie and just like asking, it's like, where does she go to for these emotions as an 11-year-old girl? Because she goes to really deep, dark places, and it's like, where do you find that at that age? Like, what experiences have you had? It's crazy.
I mean, it's just super good direction and good lines and just great portrayal. Like, yeah, it's just an awesome portrayal of this character, and I loved this character in the book too. Like, Claudia is such a great character.
Yeah, so we'll have plenty of time to praise Kristen Dunst over the course of this deep dive.
Yeah, so basically,
right now,
Louis runs off, sulks. He's disgusted with himself. He's getting it's some like pure self-loathing.
He's hanging out. He's down in the sewer.
Yeah, it's such a great scene.
Lestat comes, and this is so beautifully acted. Tom Cruise does so much good non-verbal just acting with his eyes and stuff, because he comes in, and before he steps in the sewer, the first thing he does is he looks at his shoes. Like, am I really going to walk in here in these shoes? Yeah. Oh, okay, I got to do it. And he walks in, and he does this thing like where he kind of like looks up at the ceiling of the sewer, and it's just like, like, and you sense how uncomfortable. And he just sort of like, he gives Louis, he's like, I always can find you, Louis, because I just follow the trail of dead rats. And he gets Louis to come home, and
he's playing kind of good guy Lestat. Like, puts his arm around his shoulder and stuff, and brings him home and says he has a gift.
He brought home the little girl. Lestat is gonna pull the classic move, trap him with a kid. Your boyfriend or significant other is gonna leave. What if we had a kid? Yeah. And you buy yourself a little more time in the relationship.
Have to stay. Yeah, he literally does, and he says that he knew that Louis would leave, and so he brought Claudia into their little family so that they could stay there and be her parents.
Yeah, and in this, we transition to what I call adorable gay couple with murder moppet montage.
Yeah.
And they just become this cute vampire family, and there's a whole bunch of really adorable scenes. These are like the funnest part of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Louis is a great mom, and he takes care of Claudia and gets her dolls and dresses and all sorts of everything. He enjoys combing her hair and doing all these things. Meanwhile, Lestat is teaching her vampire shit. Like, how do you prey on people? Like, crying to get people to come over and then just eating them. So it's like this dichotomy. It's such a great portion of the movie, this the Lestat, Louis, and Claudia montage.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's not just, they also take time for like culture, like piano lessons and stuff, and like they really have sort of something approaching a healthy family for a time. And Louis stops being such a piss pants about feeding, and he kind of gets with the program. And so we have a little part here where things are happy, but after about 30 years, Claudia is no longer happy.
Yeah, because she's figured out her body is never gonna grow up. But mentally and psychologically, she's pretty moved on. She's not a little girl anymore.
Yeah, she's like going into middle age now, and there's a scene where she kind of spies this woman like nude and sort of dressing herself through a window, and Lestat's like, well, don't you want her? And she's like, I want to be her. Like, I want to be a woman. Like, how do I grow up? And they both have this sort of like, who's gonna tell her?
Like, and so like, cut to back to the apartment. Lestat brings her a doll.
Yeah,
and she's like, a doll, great. I have so many of them. And then Lestat's like, you should clean up some of this stuff. And so she starts throwing things on the ground, and she uncovers the corpse of that adult woman rotting in her bed.
Yeah, gnarly. And
it is gruesome. She's like, I wanted her. And she just throws a fit, and she runs around and she cuts off her beautiful ringlet hair, and it immediately grows back, and she's just utterly horrified.
Yeah, that's when she comes in and she's like, which one of you did it? And she starts like just chewing them out. Oh, this scene is so good. She's so good in this. Like, I've watched this scene multiple times, and she's so powerful, and like they're both cowed by it. To a point. Lestat always pushes back because that's his low emotional intelligence, and he lashes out when he's doesn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
But this scene is, I think it's one of the best scenes in the movie, and ultimately it leads to Louis taking Claudia back to where he found her.
Yeah, I mean, there's a moment in there like when she goes up and she cuts Lestat's cheeks and they instantly heal. And I love the interaction when she's like nearly nose to nose with them, and just the chemistry on the screen with these people, these actors. It's just so excellent. And Lestat throws some like gnarly stuff like I hope it's a beautiful woman with endowments you'll never possess. He just savagely like says mean shit to her.
Yeah, some of the scenes are tough. They go back there and to where Louis found Claudia, and he explains the whole thing, and she's disgusted with him.
Like, you fed on me?
Yeah. And she's like, I hate you. And she leaves, and he goes home, and he kind of like what do you call it? Like when you hate eat, like he went and got that double from Wendy's or whatever. Like he went out and had a meal he wasn't proud of, because he comes back to the house and he's got the blood dripping down his chin and he's moping about it. And Claudia comes back and she can't stay mad at Louis.
Yes.
But Lestat is another story. And she's like, we need to leave him. And Louis is like, he'll never let us go. And she goes, oh no. And just walks out like,
I got this solved.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Yeah, because there were some parts we sort of skipped over, but basically the bond between Louis and Claudia is super strong. Like she would at first she slept in his coffin with him, and then after a while she had her own, but she would still sneak back in and jump in his coffin with him before dawn every night. And so they're like really tight. And so basically she's like, I can't stay mad at you, Louis. And it's true. Like they love each other. And when Louis says that Lestat will never let it happen, you can just tell on Claudia's face. It's like, well, he won't have a choice, and I know you don't have the strength to do this, so I'll take care of him.
Yeah. And so this would get into the scene where you talked about where Lestat says, I hope it's a woman with endowments, because Claudia comes in like, basically like, I want to make up with you, Lestat, and I want things to go back to how they were.
And he's like angrily playing the piano.
Yeah. I love how I'm trying to think how Louis describes his piano playing in the book, because it's talking about how good at the piano he is, but how without emotion it is. It's technically good, but it's not with feeling, and that's how he's playing. He's like kind of banging the keys out, and the banging would be an emotion.
Yeah,
he's playing it
like robotic,
like robotically. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And she says that she has a gift for him, and he's suspicious, and he says some shitty stuff. And there's more great Tom Cruise face acting there, because he says that thing about the endowments, and she looks like wounded. And then you watch it, he has the face of someone that just landed a sick burn, and then it turns into I shouldn't have said that. What's wrong with me? I suck. Like, and he has this whole journey on his face, like in just a few seconds, and it's like, that's so fucking good.
Yeah,
this is a good movie. These people are good at movies.
Yeah, these guys, they act well.
Yeah.
So yeah, and this scene, she's like, I have a present for you, and she leads him into the hallway or the parlor or whatever, where there's a bench seat, and there's two young boy twins laying against each other on this thing, passed out, and she says that they're drunk on brandy.
Yeah, a thimbleful.
It's like, when I saw them, I knew that you'd have to have them.
Yeah. And Lestat, he starts feeding.
He's like, yeah, that's my shit. You know me.
And he's like, it hits him hard, and he thinks that she gave him absinthe. And she's like, no, I gave him laudanum. Unfortunately, it killed them, but it keeps the blood warm.
And he's like, you fed me dead blood? Get me to my coffin.
Yeah, because it's hasn't really been talked about in the movie. It's talked about quite a bit in the book.
They talked about it once before when Lestat tells Louis to stop drinking when you hear the heart stop because you don't want to drink dead blood.
Yeah, because it makes you sick.
Yeah.
And then, Lestat is not doing great. Claudia comes out with the razor blade and slits his throat.
Yeah, and he's like on all fours on the floor, and she just slashes his throat, and the blood just starts gushing out, and he's like writhing. And this is not really Tom Cruise.
Yeah, from the whole point, once he goes down onto all fours, it's an animatronic, and it is so good because it bleeds buckets. And it desiccates so it's like you couldn't do that with makeup.
Not in that time. You could, like modern, you could do it with computer animation, but it would look like computer animation.
Right. And this is something that's came up in American Werewolf in London, where Rick Baker said it's hard why they had to switch to an animatronic for David for Jack, because you can't remove flesh. You can always add shit to someone's face, but you can't take shit away. And so to have him kind of desiccate as he bleeds out, you need it to be a puppet.
And it's really convincing. Like when I was watching this, I was like, oh my God, it's so cool. Like, because I had read a bunch about this scene and how they made it, and it looks really, really good. You wouldn't even know that it was an animatronic unless someone told you.
Yeah, until I saw the behind the scenes and actually saw the robot, and I was like, oh shit, that robot looks like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, it looks like Tom Cruise.
Yeah. And they don't know what to do with the quote dead Lestat. Spoiler, he's not dead.
Before you get there, one of my favorite parts is he says, "Get me to my coffin." And she slashes his throat just wickedly, and she goes, "I'll put you in your coffin." And I was like, "Yeah, fuck that guy." And the thing is I was rooting for Claudia, but I still love Lestat. But that line, it was just so perfect.
Claudia's my favorite.
Yeah,
Lestat's
she's
a close
so
second.
Good. Yeah, I'm with you. Claudia was always my favorite.
My favorite little Claudia bit there is as he's bleeding out all over the place. And Piss Pants Louis comes in to not do anything, just to watch. And Claudia goes, "Pick me up," because she doesn't want to get the blood on her shoes.
And so he sets her on an ottoman. I love that. It's so good. She's so proper even to the end.
And so and then once it's all done, then Louis comes in and does classic Louis. You shouldn't have done that. Guilt.
Yeah.
Like Louis always loves to show up after the fact and tell you how you fucked up, but Louis never does anything.
Yeah.
It's Louis is frustrating.
I like Louis. I understand how he loves Lestat, and he also loves Claudia. And so when they're fighting, he's like,
Well, I have a problem with Louis, and it's because it's one of those things where when I watch someone that reflects parts of myself that I don't like, I am repulsed at seeing them because I go, I don't like this. I don't like how Louis is a big crybaby about being a vampire, because that's how I'd be about it.
Yeah.
I'd be a piss pants about being a vampire too, and so I judge him for it.
And sometimes it's funny because whenever when I would watch this when I was younger, and then even this last time, I see like when Lestat is just intentionally shitty to people, I'm like, oh man, I used to do that.
Used to do that.
Air quotes, used to do that. I don't do it much anymore, but yeah, I used to do it a lot. I'd pull the whole Lestat, just say the meanest thing that came to mind. And so, yeah, sometimes I'm just like, man, come on, chill out, Lestat. Don't be such a dick.
I see you more as an Armand. I think you're more of an Armand than a Lestat. But
well, yeah, I mean,
young Dave was more of a Lestat.
Yeah, I none of these characters are great analogs for us, but I think there are certain elements of their personalities that we sometimes have those elements, and so we hate those things.
Yeah, totally.
Them.
It took me the whole, like, I was almost to the end of the book before I was like, wait, I don't like Louis because he's too much like me. But so Claudia is a woman of action, and she's like, we'll take him to the swamp.
And they wrap him up and they dump him in an alligator swamp.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was just like, when I first was reading this, I was like, oh shit, they killed fucking Lestat. Holy shit, you can't kill Lestat.
Yeah, it's unfortunate all this stuff happened well, it's fortunate for us as readers and viewers that this happened before Claudia starts doing all her research on vampires.
Yeah.
Because she could have probably come up with a better scheme of keeping him dead than dumping him in the swamp.
Oh, yeah. I think that after she did like months worth of research on vampires in the libraries and whatnot, she would have probably cut his head off and burned him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like, okay, they're all pretty consistent on this. You take the head off and burn it.
Yeah, that'll work. That kills literally any supernatural being.
Actually, it kills any being. Natural or supernatural.
Yeah, okay. I thought that was implied.
So they think, we're free of Lestat. They go back home, start putting the dust covers on everything because they're going to go to Europe. Claudia starts studying all the vampire lore she can find, and Louis sets up a passage across the ocean, and
they're gonna find their people.
Yeah,
because they knew Lestat came from Paris.
That's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was from Paris, and the one that made him was from Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to go to Europe, and they're just living the dream, and they're about to set their little birds free when suddenly there came a rapping at the chamber door. Someone's downstairs, and they think it's the carriage come to take him to the ship.
Mm-hmm. And I love it because then you see Lestat's face, and he just looks gnarly as fuck. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Claudia, you've been a very, very naughty little girl. And I was like, yes, that's so good.
Swamp Monster Lestat is great.
Yeah. He's so grim.
He comes in, he's all, swamp thinged out, and he's filthy, and he sits down playing the piano and just kind of reading them for trash about how they did him dirty.
And he had to survive on the blood of the alligators and then the snakes.
Yeah, they just took him to a blood buffet. Like, there's too many things in the swamp. Just leaving him out in the backyard would have been better if you wanted to get rid of him.
Just wrap him up and put him in a bathtub.
Or put him out where the sun's gonna.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, the sun would work, but they don't really know that, I guess. No, they do. They sleep during the day.
Yeah, and so they again. I don't think Louis de Pont-de-Lac has ever got a cleaning deposit back on anywhere he's rented, because anytime he moves out, he burns the place down.
Yeah. Well, these guys seem to have an unlimited source of funds. They just sort of steal. Yeah.
Well, and the book spends a lot of time explaining their income and everything from the indigo plantations, and and they have he has multiple plantations, and then they invest the money also, and Lestat comes up with money from the high society people that he kills, and Louis invests that money, and like they have all these like shell accounts. The book really gets wonky about finances.
I guess Anne Rice was interested in money.
And I think she wants to. People always will ask those questions. Well, how are they even affording all this? And she's like, well, actually, they're really good investors.
Yeah, you see, Louis was a plantation owner that understood finance.
Which that was the whole reason Lestat picked him, was because he needed that.
He's a rich guy. Yeah, he's a rich guy that understands how to stay rich.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to turn that golden goose into a vampire.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. So anyways, they burn the house down. Lestat is on fire and crawling around on the ceiling when we leave him, and Louis and Claudia hoof it to the ship.
Which makes me wonder, are these guys maybe Ventru that have fortitude? Because fuck, they take a lot of damage.
Lestat does, for sure. Yeah, he takes... Being immolated and surviving that's a tough one for anything.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he lives through it. So,
well, we don't know that yet.
You don't know it at this point in the movie, but basically, like, yeah, it's really cool. Flaming Lestat walking on the walls and ceilings is really cool. And then you get this really cool, like, kind of great cinematography, and I'm sure it was with some green screen or whatnot, where you see Louis and Claudia watching the French Quarter burn from the deck of a ship as it pulls out. And I was like, wow, this is really cool.
I was thinking about how much collateral damage they did, because they burn the whole like waterfront corridor down as they're leaving. And Louis likes to shit on everyone for loss of, like, for killing people and stuff, but he does a lot of damage, man. Like, he's very destructive.
He's no saint. He is no saint. Yeah. I've been to New Orleans and down there, and that shit is packed in. Like, it's tight.
Yeah, so when you see blocks and blocks of row houses burning, like, that's mass casualties.
Yeah, exactly. So basically they make it to Europe, and we get this really cool montage where they talk about how they cross the ocean, and the boat is free of all rats, but there's a sickness coming down on the crewmen, but Louis and Claudia are gloriously free of it.
Yeah, luckily they never caught that fever that was going around.
Yeah, and it's cool because Claudia is doing this really cool art, like charcoal art and whatnot, on an easel, and it kind of goes through, and Louis is narrating all the places they went and looked for all the places. And as he's narrating, it kind of flips through all of Claudia's artwork because she drew them all. And it's really, really a nice device to show you, like, a montage of traveling the world looking for vampires and finding nothing, and then ending up settling in Paris in 1870.
Yeah. And so this was quite a departure from the book. For one, with the locations, it combines Louis' time traveling with Claudia and Louis' time traveling with Armand, and combines them into one epic trip.
It really truncates his relationship with Armand almost into nothing.
Yeah, and I guess we'll get there in a second. And the other thing is, it cuts the whole side quest of the revenants in Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Because Claudia, because of, literature, is basically, in the books is sure that the source of vampires is in Central Europe, Romania, Transylvania, Moldova, those places. And they go there and they find vampires, but not like them. They're monstrous, like, mindless zombie vampires.
Yeah. For sure. They're not the same sort of being, but they are something different and supernatural. And that's one thing you learn as you read more of the Anne Rice novels is there's a lot more supernatural shit in this Vampire Chronicles world. Yeah. It's not just these vampires. And really, this story is about a super naive vampire.
Yeah.
So
vampires that don't really know shit about vampires.
Or anything.
Right. Yeah.
Except finance, actually.
Except he's really good at managing his funds and diversifying his investments. And he can shotgun a rat like nothing.
So he's kind of a bro.
Yeah. He is a himbo.
Oh, man. He's like a modern, like, Bitcoin bro. Money and beers.
Oh, can you imagine? That's how it would be. It's like he'd be explaining cryptocurrency to
you just don't understand the blockchain.
And Lestat would be like, I don't care about any of this, Louis. He's like, how do I make the Bitcoin into money I can spend, Louis?
That would be so fucking funny do a parody.
So, yeah. So let's get back on track. They make it to France. And just they're basically living it up in France.
Yeah.
They're people, they're colonials of French descent, and they're in the motherland and loving it. And when I
love the fashion, how it evolved. It just looks so good. Yeah. I love this late 1800s look. That's my favorite kind of fashion.
It is very, very, very dapper. They're all very sophisticated.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And when they finally give up on finding any more vampires, a vampire finds them.
Yes. Louis is walking down the street and he's got his top hat and his cane and the whole deal. And somebody is like shadowing him and he turns and the guy becomes a complete mirror of him. He does a total pantomime.
And he's wearing the exact same tuxedo even. Like
yes.
He like it's single white female levels. Like he mirrors all his movements, but he's also dressed like him, and it's very creepy.
Yeah, and then it kind of evolves, and he starts dancing upside down, and Louis is kind of like, "Oh shit, a fucking vampire!"
Yeah,
and then the guy Santiago comes and he knocks Louis' hat off.
Yeah, that's when Louis gets offended,
and Louis like, "What?" He's like so mad, and then you see Armand.
Well, yeah, because
Antonio Banderas show up at the end of the alley.
Santiago and Louis have a little bit of a shoving match, and then that's when Armand breaks it up. And yeah, Armand shows up, and he's a very impressive individual.
Yeah, and so he they cast Antonio Banderas to play this guy, and he looks nothing like Armand from the books.
Well, I mean, the main difference I think is Armand has auburn hair in the books, and Antonio Banderas has like jet black hair.
Well, and he's supposed to be smaller and with childlike features. He's not supposed to look like a spooky big, like tall, respectable looking guy. He's supposed to have like auburn curls and be small and have cherubic features. That's one of the direct descriptions of him.
You know, I think probably because I watched the movie first, I just sort of overwrote Antonio Banderas' face onto Armand whenever he was in the story, and didn't think about the dissonance there.
And I like this better, actually, because supposedly in this part, he tells Louis a little while later that he's the oldest vampire he knows of.
Yeah.
And I actually think that having him be like kind of a more stately, respectable guy rather than kind of a childlike looking guy, I think that I like that better for the role. So it worked out.
Yeah. And he gives Louis a business card for Théâtre des Vampires. And says, bring the petite beauty with you, and no one will harm you. I won't allow it. And finally, they found vampires, so they got to go check it out.
And the vampires are doing a show of their vampires pretending to be humans, pretending to be vampires, entertaining a crowd full of humans.
Yeah.
It's very meta.
Yeah, it is very meta. Claudia calls it avant-garde, like because they're putting it out on Front Street because they literally feed on a woman on stage in front of a crowd.
Yeah, and she's not into it. Like, this is not an actress. They bring her on stage and they kind of strip her down and scare the shit out of her. Vampires do not respect consent.
Yeah, not here. And it, even though because Armand comes out and enchants her, and she quits struggling, that's coercion, not consent.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But Armand, when he comes out, and there are all the other vampires are in these like kind of black silken cloak-like things, and he's in this striking red velvet outfit with his long black hair. He looks so cool, and he's kind of standing there, and she's like pressed up against his chest, and you have the coven of vampires kind of slinking up behind her in their black velvet outfits. It's just so creepy, and the kind of the choreography of the scene is just so well done.
Yeah, because they're kind of like in like Santiago is the Grim Reaper, and they're kind of emissaries of death.
Yeah, they're like spirits of death or something.
Yeah, and it's very evocative of like bat wings, very vampire type stuff. And yeah, I totally agree with you. It's all very. If you went to the Théâtre des Vampires and saw this, you got your money's worth from the show. It was a very impressive show, especially for people who have never seen a movie before.
Yeah, and I mean the vampires in the coven, they're all like. they all have like sneering, shitty faces. Like every single one of them, except Armand, is so punchable. That's like,
well, yeah,
immediately I'm thinking, man, I hate you all.
Because my notes when Santiago came in, I said Santiago parentheses the dick actor, and it's a whole theater of dick actors. Mm-hmm. Like every one of them, they're all like, well, I mean, like you embraced a whole theater troupe. And
of just snobbish pricks
who all thought they were already the shit and then gave them superpowers. Yeah. And they just act like it. They're all terrible. And, you know, it's a little bit of a jump ahead. But it's a big bum out for Louis and Claudia that when they finally meet other vampires, they hate them.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, we don't like you at all. Mm-hmm. And so like Armand and Louis have some, you know, and Claudia's there, but she's mostly quiet, and they're talking, and Louis is asking questions, and Armand just has no useful answers.
Yeah, I said, like,
it's just terrible.
He has answers, but not the answers that Louis wants. Like, it's not what he traveled around the world to hear.
He's like, I know nothing of God.
Yeah, he wants to know. He's like, so the devil made us? That's what I think it is. And he's like, God and the devil, I don't think they exist. He's like, fuck. So there's no reason to live? He's like, I want there to be a reason for all this. He's like,
why?
Yeah, you just do it.
And basically, Armand says, like, you feel too much. Mm-hmm. So much you make me feel.
Yeah, which that is... what attracts Armand to Louis. So
that's
like
what attracted Lestat to Louis.
Armand likes Louis's emotion, and Louis likes Armand's wisdom. And they're both just super into each other, just from immediate, like it's love at first sight.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like Louis craves stability and somebody he can trust and rely on that he never had with Lestat, because Lestat was always mocking and mean and whatnot, and he would never give Louis answers. Like, he wouldn't even tell Louis how to make a vampire. He would always imply that only he had the power.
Right.
But Armand is, even though he's cryptic, somehow he seems more reliable and forthright.
Yeah.
And so Louis is just super into that. And then, of course, Armand just says it straight up, like, you make me feel. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, awakens something inside of him, makes his heart beat again, like, so to speak.
And all the while, Claudia's very uncomfortable.
She's like, well,
and
I'm the third wheel here.
Yeah, she can feel she's getting squeezed out. And then when she kind of excuses them and says, you know, it's time for them to go home. And I mean, I don't want to skip over this because it's important. As they're leaving, Louis is kind of realizing he'd made some mistakes when it came to Lestat. Mm-hmm. And Santiago real quick reads his mind.
Yeah.
Because he was thinking, he's like, I've wronged you, Lestat. And Santiago's right there. Who's Lestat? How'd you wrong him? Did you kill him? Because you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, there's only one law. I bet you broke it.
Yeah. And Santiago didn't like Louis from the start, especially once Louis called him a buffoon, which, you know, when you get into French theater and French drama, buffoon is a very particular type of clown, and they take this shit seriously. And that's not his gig. Yeah. He's a different kind of actor.
Yeah, and so they're on the way. They leave, but Santiago, he's found a thread, and he's pulling on it.
He's going to keep pulling on it.
And so Louis and Claudia, they talk about Armand, and basically she tells him, like, I know you love him, and I'll let you go.
Well,
should I let you go? I mean, she knows she's on the way out.
And she tells him that his soul was telling her to leave Louis and let him and Louis be together and to leave. And Louis is just not, he doesn't even believe it that Armand is doing this.
And he doesn't want to move that fast. He wants to be wooed a little more.
Yeah. Well, and again, when he's going to exemplify bad habits I have, he's going to try and have his cake and eat it too. He's like, oh, why can't I have both?
Yeah. I'll have you and I'll have Armand.
And everything will be good. We'll all get along. will be a polycule.
It's like, you'll be my girl and he'll be my guy and everything will be awesome.
You're my daughter. You're in love with me. It's weird, but yeah. So anyways, they kind of go their separate ways here a little bit. And Kristen Dunst goes, she has a good monologue here. It actually made me tear up. And then she leaves and she goes to the doll shop, is where she meets Madeline, who she kind of picks to be her new companion. And Louis goes back to Armand for some more quality time.
Yeah, and Armand basically is like, you need to send her away. And he says, then I leave too.
Yeah. And it's like, because the group, at some point, they don't trust her. They don't trust you. I can protect you, but I can't protect her too. And this is just not going to work. And when Louis gets home, Claudia's there with Madeline. She's brought her home.
Yeah.
And she's got her dressed up, and she's dressed up to be a vampire, and she wants Louis to turn her. Like, Claudia, I mean, I think some time has passed here. Like, it's just a few minutes in the movie, but this is probably several nights.
Yeah, and basically Madeline, she has a locket that had a daughter that she lost that looks very much like Claudia, and basically Louis is guilted into making her a vampire by Claudia.
Yeah.
He makes her a vampire, and the performance of Claudia pleading and then demanding and then pleading with Louis and crying.
Oh, it's so...
I was like, oh my God, how did she not win an Oscar for this?
Yeah. No, I really, I teared up, and I was like, damn, this little girl is good. She's so good in this scene. And this is heavy shit, because this really does, Madeline, her story mirrors Anne Rice's story, losing her daughter. And Madeline makes porcelain dolls, and Anne Rice collects porcelain dolls.
It's obvious this is Anne Rice.
Yeah, it's like her entry, like her POV character into the story. And something I thought that Madeline said, because Louis asks her, he's kind of like, he's like, why do you even want to be a vampire? Because you think we're so magical. What is she? is she just like another one of your dolls? And her big contribution is when she says she's a daughter that can never die. And that really kind of like strikes home with Louis, because he wouldn't hand her over to someone that's going to think of her like a doll, but someone that could love her the way that he believes she should be loved.
Because at the opening of the movie, Louis had just lost his daughter.
Yeah.
And then Madeline has lost her daughter.
Yeah. And so there's enough empathy and commonality established there that Louis caves.
Well, Louis caves. That's just one of the things he does.
That's one of the things he does. And in the book, Armand says that he kind of puppet mastered this whole thing, putting them together and kind of making Louis cave, because Armand is always like fiddling in people's minds.
Yeah. He's kind of a manipulator.
Oh yeah, you don't get to be the oldest vampire, or oldest known vampire, by not fiddling in people's minds.
Yeah, and then the Parisian vampires break in and abduct Madeline, Louis, and Claudia. And I love how the one lady vampire, she goes, "It's time for justice, little one."
Oh yeah,
it's so grim. I love it. I mean, I say this is grim a lot, but this movie is dark.
It's a very
like
dark
they're
movie.
Dragging them out in order to kill them. This is no joke.
And it sucks because like Louis having one of his pity parties, because he says it's not that woman in there dying, it's the last vestige inside of me that was human is dying. Or died, and him and
he's like, now we're even.
Yeah, and him and Claudia kiss, and it's sad and it's sweet and it's gross and it's beautiful and it's everything, and Claudia's literally like shitting out her humanity in the other, or not Claudia, Madeline's shitting out her humanity in the other room, and that's horrifying. And then they get abducted on top of it, and it's like not even a moment for all this shit to sink in.
Yeah, I guess that was Kirsten Dunst's first kiss with anyone was on stage with Brad Pitt.
I know.
And she said it was gross. It was like kissing her older brother.
Yeah, and I think she was a real lifeline to him in his depression through this, because she's just this electric little kid, and she's fun, and they had a really good relationship, and I think it's a real bright spot for him in this movie too.
Yeah, I wonder if they stayed friends, through the years. I don't know about,
I bet they follow each other on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's 6 months of your life. It's not. It's sometimes it might seem huge at the time, but in retrospect, 6 months is 6 months.
6 months to an 11-year-old is a fuck ton of time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So basically, they get dragged back to the theater. And they imprison Louis in a coffin. They put him in this coffin, clamp it down, and then they put him behind a brick wall. They start bricking it up in front of him.
Yeah, full cask of Amontillado.
And they put Claudia and Madeline in what looks like a dry well. Basically, it's just a chamber open to the sky.
I called it an oubliette.
And that is pretty accurate.
Yeah, and I learned that during Labyrinth, and I thought I'd pull that vocabulary word out.
Yeah, I don't know if most oubliettes are open from the bottom. I think they usually only open from the top. But yeah,
it's a trap that only opens from the top. I guess it's not technically, because they do put them in at the floor level. So there is a way out at the floor. So it's not a true oubliette.
Yeah,
strike that from the record. If we had an editor, go ahead and cut that.
Yeah, but we don't got any money for that.
And so basically, when the sun comes up, they're toast.
And it's so sad that they're hugging and crying. And when Claudia was burned to a crisp, to just a charred remains around, like being sheltered by Madeline. When I was reading the book, I just dropped the book and I went for a walk outside. I was a teenager. I was upset.
It's really sad because there's sort of this glimmer right here that there is sort of we can make this work moment.
Yeah.
And
like Madeline might spark something. They could make it work.
Yeah. And if Madeline and Claudia went back to New Orleans and Louis stayed with Armand, and you can kind of for a second think that things are going to work out for everyone. But they don't.
And I hated the Parisian vampires. In every watching of this movie, I hate them. I hate how they're laughing and there's this carnival music playing during it.
Yeah.
They don't take the execution seriously. There's no gravitas. It's just all a joke to them.
Yeah. And with Stephen Ray, he's that plays Santiago. He's an Irish actor. I hate him too, and that's good acting.
Yeah.
You're supposed to hate him, and it's because they do their job well. So it's not it's not one of those things where this guy ruined the movie. It's no, he's just really good at being a callous fuckhead that doesn't care they just killed these people.
Yeah, and this next couple moments, it's almost like a weird time is gray because in the book. And I think even supposedly in the screenplay, it was supposed to be 3 days pass with Louis in the coffin.
Oh yeah.
But in the movie, it almost seems like Armand waits until Claudia's dead, knows that she's dead, and then goes and immediately busts Louis out of the coffin and starts, comforting him, and then he goes in and he finds the charred bodies, and his performance in the scene when he's gazing upon the ashen versions of Claudia and Madeline, it's just ice cold. I love it. He just turns inward, and you can see just he becomes dark in that moment.
Yeah, because this is, and it's even more explicit in the book, but the light inside of him goes out.
Yeah.
Like, because Claudia really was that one thing. And
He was the daughter that he had lost and then found again.
right. And so from here on out, Louis is like, there's none of the sort of soft side of Louis is left.
He loses the spark and he just becomes the cold, sullen Louis. He's never warm again.
Yeah.
And then it kind of cuts back to Louis and Malloy in the modern day, and Louis cries.
Yeah.
And he Malloy asks, "Oh, vampires can cry," and he says, "Once, maybe twice."
Yeah, it's not common because and there's quite a bit made of in the book about the vampire sense of detachment, which Louis has not, up until this point, had never been able to achieve. He'd never been able to be detached. And then after this, he is much more successful about feeling detached.
And so this is the point of the story. If you're a person who likes plot diagrams, this is what you call all is lost.
Yeah.
This is where, Dumbledore dies. This is where, Obi-Wan Kenobi dies. This is where all is lost.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere left to go but up. You're at the lowest of the lows.
Right.
And so Louis, he comes back just before dawn, after they've already, the theater of vampires have already gotten into their coffins, and he has these casks. It looks like kerosene. Yeah. And he's busting them open with the butt of the scythe, the Reaper's scythe from the stage show.
Yeah, and it's good because it's evocative. The scythe has meaning for him and for Santiago, who he wants to revenge himself on, right? Because he literally was a planter, and the scythe is how you reap your crop, and the scythe is what Santiago used when he played Death on stage. So it's very poetic and just good storytelling.
Yeah, and it was just this scene where Louis is just cracking open these casks of kerosene and just spreading it all over, and then he lights them on fire, and vampires start bursting out of their coffins one at a time, and he's just waiting like a fucking goalie. And he just scythes them down.
Yeah, reap.
I was just like, yeah, fuck those guys.
I know, it's
if
killing a vampire is the greatest crime, what do you get for killing 15 vampires?
Yeah, like a super criminal. Yeah, I fucking loved it. And then he's like kind of stalking through the place, and then Santiago charges him, and he's pantomiming like he also has a scythe in his hand.
Yeah. Why he goes to the mirror move again. It's like, it's not going to work if you don't have one.
Yeah, and he tries to outspeed Louis, like to zip around behind him, but he's not fast enough, and Louis slashes him and cuts his torso in two, and he just kills him. And then he goes outside of the burning theater. Louis loves to burn shit.
I know, that's what I said. He's never left an address without burning it down. He does it 3 times.
I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's your calling card.
Yeah. And you never have that weird thing where you see it like, I used to live there and now someone else lives there and they did it different. Nope, not if you burn it down.
And so he goes outside, and then the sun is coming up. He's like, oh shit, miscalculation.
I think
or maybe he didn't care. He's like, I'm just gonna kill them and then die.
Yeah, in the book he has it plotted out better, where he has his own carriageman waiting for him. I think in the movie you're just supposed to think he doesn't care if this is the last ride, and he doesn't care if he makes it out. But Armand cares, and we have not ever talked about Armand's his little pet blood bag.
Yeah, the little blood doll. Yeah, he has this young boy who is his blood doll, this young dark-haired boy. And the boy is driving the carriage, and Armand opens the door, and he's like, Louis, come here. And he gets inside the shelter of the carriage, and then the young boy drives it away, and they leave, and he saves him.
Yeah. And then we cut to, I think they're in the Louvre, and Louis and Armand are walking around admiring the art, and Armand is kind of talking about, his vision of the future.
Yeah.
And Louis is like, yeah, maybe that would have happened before you killed my daughter. And I know you could have stopped it, but you didn't. So no, I'm leaving. And Armand is very sad.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, this is a much longer thing in the book, and they just like cut it off.
They're just like straight to the breakup.
Mm-hmm.
And Louis leaves, and basically Armand says, we must be powerful, beautiful, and without regret. And that's just a lesson that Louis doesn't want to learn.
Yeah.
And he all he has left is his suffering. He's just a total goth.
Yeah.
And then his parting line to Armand is it's so good. He's like, "You're dead and wish for me to quicken you once more. I must regretfully decline."
Yeah.
It's like ice cold. We're still cold, Louis.
Yeah.
And then he just,
because Armand says that he's like, if you leave, I'll die, and he's like, you're already dead.
Yeah. He's like, "You're dead, and you want me to resurrect you, but nah." And then he leaves, and decades pass, and Louis never recovers from the loss of Claudia, and he basically is just this cold, detached version of what he once was forevermore. And he
gets into movies. I thought that was kind of an interesting addition. Is like, because he's
a cinemaphile.
Yeah, he
could do a podcast in the modern day.
I bet, and just hundreds of years worth of films. He really could give you a real deep dive on stuff.
For sure. And so basically he returns to America, gets into cinema, and it kind of cuts to New Orleans, 1988. He's wearing a rockin' suit with a big lapel.
Yeah, and one of those shirts without the collar.
Yeah,
and
Mandarin collar.
And it just has the little pin in it.
Very cool.
Oh, you think those are... I don't think that's cool.
I like that look. I don't like...
I remember thinking it was very cool at the time.
Yeah. I still think that is a look. Like, if that suit had been black, it would be cool.
Oh, you're right. It's not black. It's like tan.
Yeah, he's wearing a tan suit. And had the suit been black, it would have been fucking dope. Like the whole look. I mean, it's clearly late 80s, but
yeah.
So basically he goes back and he's wandering New Orleans, and he says he smelled the scent of death. And as he walked toward it, it got stronger, and it wasn't the corpses. And he finds Lestat in a crypt.
Well, it's like an old mansion.
Yeah, it's like some sort of dilapidated old house or something. And Lestat is all like twitchy and afraid of him, and he's all like a shadow of his former self.
Yeah, he's mostly healed, right? Like, he looks pretty good. His hands are still fucked up.
He looks like Lestat, but
he doesn't look like we left him, which was literally on fire. Like, he's recovered quite a bit.
But it's been a long time. It's been like 100 years.
Yeah. But he's still not all the way back to 100. Like, he's still suffering. And he thinks Louis is like, at first he jumps back, like he thinks Louis is going to attack him. And then Louis is just like, no. I'm just here to talk. And he's like, he's like, so you've come home to me then? Because if you come home, then I can start going out again. And like he basically starts pitching him on let's move back in together. Things can be how they were.
Yeah. And
Louis is like, oh no, that sounds awful.
Yeah, I'm not going to be with you again. You're the worst.
Yeah.
And so Louis declines and he leaves. One thing I wasn't sure of, like, there's a chopper that shines its light into this old mansion.
It's like a police helicopter literally comes down to window level and shines the light in.
And it scares the shit out of Lestat. But, like, why are they there?
I think it's just because we're in a crime-ridden part of New Orleans. And it's just like, they call them ghetto birds, like the police helicopter just kind of always flying around those areas because you're always looking for someone. And so I think that's the pretense. I mean, literally coming down to window level and shining your light straight in through the window, that's a bit much.
Yeah.
Even for a police helicopter. But, you know, for the sake of the storytelling or whatever, sure, they fly that low.
Sure.
Yeah. In the book, it's just a police car that goes by. It's not a helicopter, but the helicopter is way more
It's
dramatic.
more dramatic, yeah. And so then Louis walks away, and then he concludes the interview with Malloy.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel Malloy is like, surely that's not it. You brought me here for a reason.
Yeah.
This isn't all for nothing. You're going to make me a vampire, right? Like, that was why you brought me here.
Yeah. And Louis is like, oh, I have failed utterly. Like, and you almost get the impression this is not even the first time Louis tried to tell someone how bad being a vampire was, and they go, okay, but it'll be different for me.
Yeah, but make me a vampire for sure.
Yeah, and Louis is always like, God damn, these people always want to be vampires. I tell them how bad it is. I spend a whole movie telling them how bad it is, and they're like, sounds good, sign me up.
And then he rushes him with this super speed, and he's like, do you like being food for the immortals? And he looks all intimidating and shit. And Malloy's like, and gathers his shit and runs off.
Yeah.
And he's like playing the tapes of Louis talking as he's in his convertible Mustang driving away. And you see like he's on the Golden Gate Bridge and you see Lestat jumps on the car and climbs in and he says, I'm going to give you the choice I never had.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, when he first pops up horror movie style, he goes, I assume I need no introduction.
Yeah.
Like, because again, I think we were his POV at the start. It's like he's been snooping this whole thing.
Like, he listened to Louis tell this dude the whole story.
Yeah. He's sitting there. It's like, that's not how that happened.
I was like, God damn it. I was way cooler than that.
Yeah. It's almost like he is like, I'm going to follow that guy and tell him how this stuff really happened.
And he's like, he offers to make him a vampire, and then he bites him and all of that. And then he takes over the driving, and they start playing Sympathy for the Devil. And I love how Lestat fixes his cuffs of the old and gnarly lace, and then he mocks the tape of Louis whining.
Yeah, he's like, Louis always whining. Like,
but and you can tell Lestat is back.
Yeah, and it seems like we are driving off into a sequel right now. A few things. Sympathy for the Devil. This is the Guns N' Roses cover of it. That has become such a fucking cliche in movies. Like, whenever you introduce a sort of like, not like a likable villain character, they always play Sympathy for the Devil.
Sure.
But I don't feel like it had really become the cliche that it is yet.
Oh, no.
I feel like this is a real early deployment of that song.
Oh, for sure. I definitely feel like it was spot on and slick when in this movie when it came out.
Yeah, because now that's one of the things. Whenever I hear that song start in a movie, I go, "Oh God, here we go again."
Well,
Sympathy for the Devil.
I just think of Tom Cruise Lestat instantly.
Well, I mean, and we've come to the end. This is very different, I think, from the way the book ends, where Louis actually feeds on. They just call him the boy in the first book. And he feeds on him, and he's like, am I going to die? And he's like, I don't know. And just walks off and leaves him there to recover or not. And then again, he starts playing the tape, and he plays the part where Louis says where he found Lestat in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And basically sets off to go there to go find him.
Yeah.
In this, they totally streamlined that. Like, Lestat finds you, and you don't have to go find him.
And Armand doesn't make you a vampire.
Yeah,
you know,
because Armand's out of the story. We've trimmed Armand down to like almost nothing.
Yeah, and man, you could make a whole movie about Armand. I mean, his story is really cool. So yeah, I mean, this is really cool. Do you want to take a break and then come back and wrap this up?
Sure, sounds good. Okay, welcome back, divers. So, Dave, what worked for you?
The casting. I feel like Tom Cruise killed it as Lestat. Brad Pitt was perfect for Louis. Kristen Dunst was amazing as Claudia. And I mean, I liked even the minor characters like Armand and Malloy. Like, it was just, the acting was so good. I loved the costumes and sets. I thought that it was all really cool how they paid such close attention to the time period and made sure the characters were wearing the right clothes and stuff. I thought they always looked really good.
Did it never bumped up against your anachronism filter? Like they were pretty on with the eras.
This is all fairly late periods, starting the late 1700s. So it's all the stuff super well documented. You don't have to go to like grave finds and stuff,
Right. But still, people mess these things up.
That's true. They do.
Like, this is Edwardian period and mixed with Victorian period.
And admittedly, I am not an expert on these periods. This is not my area, but I thought it was really cool. And then I would just say, kind of as a nebulous overall look and style, this kind of reminds me of how The Crow had a look.
Yeah,
this movie has a look, and it's really dark. It's desaturated, and it's very it's just beautiful to look at. Like, I just think that this movie just looked so good. So what about you? What were for you?
Oh man, I'm going to parrot a bunch of the stuff that you said. So my number one was a little more specific. Kristen Dunst and Tom Cruise. In specific, those two blew me away. They're so amazing. And it just makes me, especially with Tom Cruise, I'm just like, I'm so offended that we didn't get like 2 more movies of Tom Cruise playing Lestat.
Oh man, yeah.
And it's like, I don't know how Warner Brothers just left that bag on the table there. Number 2, again, same as you, production design, costume design, and Stan Winston effects. This movie is just beautifully designed, and it encapsulates the 90s version of gothic horror aesthetic,
which is a very specific thing.
It is a very specific thing, because like it evokes things like, say, like the Hammer horror movies, like Horror of Dracula or whatever. It's evocative of those things, but in this updated way that felt very modern for the mid 90s.
Yeah.
And still looks good. Like, it still holds up visually today. It doesn't look like when you watch something and you're like, whoa, I mean, times have changed. It still has a really cool look. And then, I really like how it adapted the book. Like I said earlier, it kind of hot rods the book, takes the excess parts off and gets it down just to the bare bones. The lean and mean version of this story dispenses with unnecessary characters and just like, but stays true to the core of the story. And so that doesn't always happen. A lot of times when you're trimming, sometimes they trim off meat when they're cutting fat off of a story, and stuff really should have been left in. But I think these were smart cuts they made to streamline it. And since it came up a few times, you highlighted it, but we never called it out directly. Martin Perez's score is beautiful.
Right. The music is amazing in this movie.
And it's so, like, I listened to the whole score today, and it's just very evocative. Like, it's one of those scores where it's real easy to imagine the scenes in the movie that are tied to those songs.
Yeah.
And so very, very good score. What didn't work for you?
So I was thinking about this, and I was really going through this with a fine tooth comb, really trying to be picky and find something. And I think it's possible to say that, through a modern sensibility with regards to casting and how the portrayal of the women in the beginning, how he was always feeding off of people of color, etc. That sort of thing it's a very 2020s point of view, especially when we're looking at a movie from, that's portraying the late 1700s. So I'm not really going to say that didn't work, because I think exploitation was legitimately real, and they're just showing it. So I really couldn't find anything that I found to be glaring or that took me out of it. There was only one moment in the whole movie that I was like, what is that for? And that was the helicopter near the end. And that was literally the only moment in the movie where I was like, I don't know about all that. Other than that, everything, I was like wrapped up in this movie again. And I've seen it so many times. So how about you? What didn't work for you?
Okay, I've got a longer list.
Oh, man.
So, but it's, first off, very similar to what you said. I said, in a modern perspective, it's very tough to have a plantation owner as a sympathetic protagonist. I think the way the movie handles the enslaved people and everything is just like uncomfortable. I think that could have been handled better. I think it's handled slightly better in the book because you get more context and more kind of remorse from Louis's point of view than you see in the movie. But yeah, I think that just doesn't look great now. And I mean, to continue kind of piling on Louis, I don't think this is Brad Pitt's best performance by a long shot. I don't think we're getting, if you look at, this is in between, I think Legends of the Fall and 12 Monkeys. And I think he's better in both of those movies than he is in this one.
I don't know. Legends of the Fall was really good, but I think that his performance here was better than 12 Monkeys for sure.
Yeah, I think there's some really good moments, but I think there's a lot of times when he would rather be anywhere else but there, and it comes through in the final product.
All right.
And this is more the book than the movie. There's some like almost like pedophile undertones in certain points in the story that are really uncomfortable, both with Claudia and with Armand's his little boy.
I don't think that comes through in the movie though.
Like the scene, because the boy is not as prominent in the movie as he was in the book, but like the scene when he introduces him to Louis and he's like, go try him, and he's got bite marks like kind of all over his body. It very much feels like you've gone into the Epstein plane, and it's like, I don't like this. This doesn't work for me. But those are my didn't work for me's.
Yeah, the whole Claudia relationship and whatnot, I don't think it bordered much on anything in the movie at all.
No,
I mean she kissed Louis while he was laying down on a banister, and if that's pedophilia, then the president of the United States is a pedophiliac because he kisses girls on the mouth with regularity.
Well, he did.
Well,
we're in a pandemic now.
How do you know he still doesn't?
Because we're in a pandemic and you can't do it anymore.
You can't do it on camera.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Actually, I don't think that the stuff with Claudia comes through in the movie the same way it does in the book. In the book, it describes, like, there's just, if a man had written that book, I would have suspicions about him, like
he's a weirdie.
Yeah, because like she spends a lot of time describing like Claudia's lips and stuff, and it's like it's all very like, ugh.
Anne Rice a bit of a creepo.
Yeah, knowing more about her situation with losing her daughter and kind of seeing it gave me a different perspective on Claudia and what Claudia represented to her, I think. And I kind of came back around on that.
Okay.
But as for Armand's boy, I mean, that's explicitly sexual.
Well, I mean, he is meant to represent the exploitation that occurs in that theater.
Yeah, totally.
He is a symbol. So,
and they're I think that they're evil vampires doing evil shit.
It's like a horror movie. It's supposed to be terrible. Like, to not like the terrible part is to say I don't like horror movies.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. I have to come up with something that didn't
No,
work
you
for
don't.
me. Yes, I do. That's part of the thing. All right. Final thoughts and rating?
So this is hard because, several of the last few movies, it's been like, let's choose Dave's favorite movies to do ratings on. And so I don't want to be the soft rating guy, but this movie it's a classic. It's one of the best vampire movies ever. There aren't many, horror movie, is the greater genre, but vampire movie is a whole fucking thing.
Right.
And this is one of the greatest. It's in the pantheon of the best ones. So I have a hard time not giving it a 5 because it's the things that are possibly wrong with it are so minuscule. They're almost meaningless in the broader context of how good the performances were, how much it lends to the genre, how it really transformed how vampire movies were made and portrayed and what they could be. They didn't have to just be, cheap thrills, sexual stuff or whatnot like they had been of recent years. I think that this movie kind of changed the game.
Yeah.
Every vampire movie made after this either was like a crazy weird like Dusk Till Dawn type thing or it was compared to this because this was the quintessential gothic horror vampire movie. Nobody did it better. So I'm just going to go with the 5 and own it.
Be true to yourself.
Yeah. So what about you? What did you think?
I like this movie a lot more than I was expecting to. And not that I was expecting to not like it, but I went in kind of just like, I've seen that movie and I don't remember thinking it was all that great, and was pretty blown away, like especially, by the performances that I talked about, Kristen Dunst and Tom Cruise. And so I'm not as strong as you, but I'm at an enthusiastic 4.
Okay. I can sort of get behind that. The critics and stuff and the online sites are worse than our ratings, but I think we've discussed this before, how all of this stuff is sort of retrospective and not since it didn't come out when
in the era of the internet.
These are all kind of, I don't know. They lose validity in my mind. So, IMDb gives it 7.5 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, 64%. Metacritic, 59%. But I think a lot of these...
That's pretty low. 59, really?
Well, the thing is that Metacritic just... It takes in all these jabronis and stuff. It's like people who are just, I'm going to rate that just on my memory. It's not, this isn't all fresh.
Yeah.
Not real ratings.
Not everyone watches a movie twice and rereads the book and does all these things before they will give it a rating.
And I think it's also, some people will rate a movie in a genre they don't like. Like, it would be like if you had me doing ratings of musicals. Not a damn one of them would be above 3 stars.
You couldn't find some sort of objectivity.
I hate musicals. I hate them. I can't stand them. It would be so. It's like if you're a person who loves musicals and you're rating a vampire movie. So get the fuck out of here. We don't want you, and you don't want me.
Yeah, and that's fine because we're not, as we say, we're not critics, we're enthusiasts, and so that's fine. But I think it's possible to objectively assess something that's not your bag.
Sure, I do that with music, where I will listen to genres that I'm not enthusiastic about, and I'll find good things about it. But those are the rare gems. You know? That's tough. Okay, so what are you into right now?
Oh man, you go first. I don't have my stuff pulled up.
So ultimately, I told you all that I've been started grad school, so I've been writing papers a lot, and I've been recording Barrowland's bass parts, doing a lot of that. So I haven't really been doing like a ton of crazy stuff. I've been saying I've been trying not to get into new things. But of course, The Witcher Season 2 came out. and I already really liked The Witcher. I listened to a bunch of the books on audiobook, and I watched season 1. So I watched season 2. It was pretty good. I enjoyed the action. I liked the plot development. I thought it was pretty cool how they moved the story forward with the larger war thing and the plot with the elves and Nilfgaard and all that stuff. I really like the character development of Ciri. I thought that was really cool, Princess Cirilla. And then I thought I enjoy every single scene that has Jaskier in it. He's just so good.
And they held him back till fairly late in the season, and I was like, I mean, when he finally shows up, actually, I kind of want to shit on this, but it's effective because when he finally shows up, and Yennefer goes up and hugs him, you feel that same way.
You're like, oh, I missed you.
Yeah, where it's like, finally you're here because everything's been going bad, and when he finally shows up, there is that, like, he brings a light into it.
And then there's even it's almost like a couple more episodes until him and Geralt cross paths, and then he kind of gives Geralt the cold shoulder, like, you left me. And they have their bromance and their makeup, and the characters are great, and the acting is so good, and Cavill is awesome.
Henry Cavill is a fucking treasure. I mean, we blow him too much on this podcast, but
it's okay.
He's great, man. Like, he's just so good.
Yeah, and I mean, I like the season. I mean, I'm not going to say that it was like overwhelmingly, amazingly, groundbreaking. It was just a very good, entertaining, solid entry into the genre. I'm glad they're making more. It's going to be really cool.
What did you think about the trailer for, like, I don't want to call it a prequel, but it's another series set earlier in the timeline in the world of The Witcher, or whatever they call it.
Seems like a cash grab, but I'll probably watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't overly moved by it, but I guess I don't know. I would be that hard as say cash grab. But it does feel like not everything needs to be a universe. And,
well, it's kind of like House of the Dragon with, the new Game of Thrones prequel. And
you're not stoked on that?
I mean, I will watch it. I read all the books and the World book.
That's a great book too.
But it doesn't. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be passable. But I mean, maybe a better thing to say would the new Lord of the Rings series. Like, I don't know if we needed another one. Another adaptation of that property. Yeah. But I'll watch it. I'll check it out. So, I mean,
there's lots of unexplored parts of Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's a world worth exploring. I don't know. It's real easy in the entertainment industrial complex and the streaming wars and all of this stuff to get very cynical about all the IP exploitation, where it's like, what all can we have the rights to the world of The Witcher, what can we make out of this? There's history in that world, let's do some of that stuff, let's do an animated spinoff, let's do this. And it's like, it's hard to not be cynical about it, but then a lot of times I like it.
Sometimes it's really good. So all right, so what are you into right now?
I saw a couple movies. And the one I'm going to highlight and use as my what am I into right now was Nightmare Alley. It's the latest movie from Guillermo del Toro. Oh, okay. It's a neo-noir. It's more of just a straight up noir because it's set in the 40s. Oh, so it's more of a noir than a neo-noir. And it's based on a novel by the same name from William Lindsay Gresham. And it stars Bradley Cooper and Willem Dafoe, and Cate Blanchett just has this amazing, stellar cast, super moody and dark. And, Bradley Cooper plays this sort of, troubled, he's like kind of a guy on the run that gets kind of brought into this circus sideshow life and becomes a mentalist, where he pretends to, or he he reads minds and tells fortunes and things like that, and spins it off into a big business and gets embroiled with some very, very dark underworld type characters. And it's a grim kind of brutal noir. And I really, I'm in the bag for Del Toro. Kind of whatever he does, I'm going to be into it. So your mileage may vary if you're not in the Del Toro bag, but if you are, you should go see this movie, or at least watch for it when it comes to streaming, which will be pretty soon. I think the theatrical run's kind of wrapping up.
I think it seems like the time between theatrical and streaming is getting shorter.
I think it used to be something like 3 months,
like 90 days or something.
Yeah, and now it's like 6 weeks.
I can't wait till it's like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's for the people who are not into the church of the cinema or whatever Denis Villeneuve called it. Yeah, it's good. It's better that you get to see the movie.
Yeah, I just don't like the other people disrupting my experience. If I could go to the theater without other people, that'd be cool.
You'd be into that, just to have a big IMAX screen to yourself.
Yeah, I just don't like the other people crinkling their popcorn, making their noise, having their chatter, clapping at stupid shit. It's like, guess what? Director's not here, dipshit. Can't hear your appreciation, but I can.
Oh, you're such a joy sucker. Well, I think that's it. Do you want to give him the call to action?
Yeah, subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher, as well as YouTube, Spotify, and Audible. Don't forget to leave us a review. A 5-star review costs you nothing, but means everything to us.
New episodes of Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse drop the 1st and 15th of every month, and you can find us on all social media platforms across the metaverse as Deep Dive the Meta. We are on Facebook until they come after us for the name Metaverse. We're on Instagram, ditto there, because that's also owned by them.
Also Facebook, yes.
And what else are we on?
Twitter.
We are on Twitter.
Nick tweets a lot.
Yeah, I tweet kind of whenever I watch a movie. So follow us on Twitter and interact with us so we can do better in the algorithm, because we hate the algorithm, but we need the algorithm.
You have to worship the algorithm.
Yeah. So,
well, I guess this is really goodbye.
Don't say goodbye. Say good journey.